The formal demand arrived the next morning at 6:40. While Nora was drinking something the station's food system had produced that was technically coffee, in the same way that a photograph of a door is technically a door. It was delivered by a Varick protocol officer, small, composed, dressed in the dark layered fabric of official rank, who stood at the entrance of their assigned quarters and waited for Cal to answer, and then handed him a sealed document carrier the size of a hardback book, and left without a word. Cal closed the door. He stood holding the carrier the way a person holds something they suspect might be warm to the touch. Then he brought it to the table where Nora was sitting, and Owen was standing with his own not coffee, and set it down between them. "It has your name on it," Cal said. Nora looked at it. "Open it." Inside was a document printed on material that was not paper and not plastic, a dense dark surface that held the light strangely. The text was in Varick script, with a human language translation printed directly below each line, which meant Veleth's people had prepared this with the specific intention of Nora being able to read it without Cal's help. That was its own message. Cal read it first. His face went through 3 different expressions that he didn't fully manage to keep off it. Then he set it down and looked at Nora. "She wants you," he said, formally, by name, as... He looked at the document again to make sure he had it right. The title translates as Shield Keeper. It's a position that sits within the sovereign's personal court. It means advisor, protector, and there's a third component the translation flags as culturally specific. Owen. Owen had already been reading over Cal's shoulder. "The third component is something like a truth keeper," he said. "Someone whose function includes telling the sovereign what is real as opposed to what is politically convenient." He looked up at Nora. "It's a real position in Varick court structure. It's not an honorary thing. It would mean traveling with the court, living on this station, or on the sovereign's primary vessel. It would mean—" "I know what it means," Nora said. She was looking at the document, not reading it anymore. Looking at it the way she looked at problems. Not at the surface of them, but at what was behind. "Nora," Cal said, in the careful tone he used when he had a lot to say and was trying to choose the safest 20%. The commission is going to need to be consulted. The diplomatic implications alone are 32 client species, and the sovereign is making a personal request for a human, which is unprecedented, and the precedent matters. And if you accept this, it will be read by every Varick diplomatic observer as a signal that humans are—" "I know, Cal." "And if you decline, then, I know." "There's also the question of what she actually wants," Owen said. He said it in the straightforward way of someone who has run out of diplomatic language and has decided honesty is more efficient. "Because on the surface, this looks like she was impressed by what happened and wants to acquire you. But the Varick don't acquire things without a specific use in mind, and a human in her personal court, specifically in the role of truth keeper, that's an unusual thing to want." "It's not unusual," Nora said. "She hasn't had one before. She said so yesterday. But that's what she meant." Cal and Owen both looked at her. "She's been collecting advisors who tell her useful things since she was whatever age Varick start doing that," Nora said. "Every single one of them is part of her system. They give her information that keeps the system running. None of them tell her things she can't process." She looked at the document once more. "Yesterday, I gave her 3 answers she had no category for. That's what she wants. Not a bodyguard, not a weapon. Someone who produces answers she can't predict." A silence. "That's either very valuable," Owen said, "or very dangerous to be." "Both, probably," Nora said. She stood and picked up her not coffee and went to the viewport. Their quarters had a narrow view of the station's external ring, and beyond it, a section of open space that had 3 small dim stars in it. So far away that the light reaching her now had left before humans had invented the wheel. She thought about that for a moment. Cal came to stand beside her. He didn't say anything, which was how she knew he had finally run out of arguments, and was now just keeping her company, which was a much more useful thing to do. "I need to talk to Lily," she said. "Nora, I know. I'll talk to the commission first. I'll do the briefing. I'll sit in the room and answer the questions, and let them run through all the implications. But I'm going to talk to Lily before I decide anything." He nodded. That was the right answer. He had learned over 3 years of working alongside her that Nora's process was not linear, and there was no point trying to make it so. She went sideways before she went forward, and she always got there. The commission briefing was 2 hours long. There were 7 people in the room, and they all had opinions, and Nora let them talk until they ran down, and then she answered the questions that had actual answers, and said, "I don't know yet," for the ones that didn't, and she said it without apology, which frustrated exactly the people she had expected it to frustrate. She found Lily in the small secondary room of their quarters, sitting on the floor with a book she had brought from home, a real paper book, which Lily had insisted on packing, and which had survived the journey in better shape than most of their documentation. Nora sat down beside her on the floor. Lily looked up. "The Queen wants me to stay," Nora said, "here, with her court, for a long time." Lily looked at her, not surprised. She had a way of not being surprised by things that Nora had started noticing around age 7. "What would you do?" "Talk to her. Tell her things. Be honest when everyone else is being careful." Lily thought about this. Is that a real job? Apparently. She looked at her book, then at Nora. "What do you want to do?" The question sat in the air between them, simple and completely impossible, the way Lily's questions always were. Nora was quiet for a long moment. Outside the station, in all that empty dark, nothing was particularly waiting for her answer. "I want to go home," she said. "I want to argue with the furnace for another winter. I want to take you to school and fight about whether you packed a proper lunch, and sit in the parking lot listening to the radio for 5 minutes before I have to go be an adult." Lily looked at her. "But," she said. Nora looked at her daughter. "But." Lily turned back to her book. "Then, if you go, I go. I know that. And if I go, I want to touch everything." Despite herself, despite the sealed shoulder and the commission and the weight of the document on the table in the other room, Nora laughed. Short, genuine, the kind that surprised you. "I know that too." Lily leaned into her good side, book still open on her knees, small, warm, completely certain of where she was. Nora sat with her daughter for a few more minutes, not deciding anything yet, just being a person in a room with their kid. Then she stood, straightened her jacket, and went to ask the protocol officer to arrange another audience with Sovereign Velith. Just her. No Cal, no Owen, no diplomatic layer. Just Nora Voss, walking down a corridor that made her feel small in a building that had never met her furnace. She rolled her good shoulder. Sovereign Velith was not what Nora had prepared for, and Nora had prepared for quite a lot. She had reviewed everything the commission had compiled on the Varak ruler. 17 documents, 2 comparative cultural analyses, 1 speculative behavioral profile written by an academic who had clearly never been in the same room as something genuinely dangerous. She had read it all. She had filtered it the way she filtered most second-hand information, keeping the structural facts and discarding the interpretations, because interpretations were usually about the person doing the interpreting. What the documents hadn't told her was the stillness. Velith was still in the way that large and old things are still, not passive, not empty, full, like the stillness was a choice that cost nothing, because she had that much of it to spare. She stood near the center of the chamber now, all 4 arms arranged in a configuration Nora didn't have a briefing note for. The formal translator had been standing at the left wall. Velith spoke 2 words to him, and he walked out. The doors closed. Your language, Velith said. Clean, precise, not practiced. She spoke it the way people speak things they learned young and kept. It is sufficient? Yes, Nora said. Good. The translator is slow, and I find the delay irritating. She moved toward a low platform near the viewport and stopped. She did not sit. You are a medical officer. Colonial settlement officer. Medical is part of the role. You have treated injuries in difficult conditions. Yes. You have been injured before. Yes. Velith's head tilted slightly. The shoulder. This is not the first time that shoulder has been damaged. It wasn't a question. The medic must have sent a report, or Velith had simply looked. It's been through some things. The same shoulder both times. Different causes. Velith processed that in silence. Not the silence of someone who had lost the thread. The silence of someone storing information and deciding what to do with it. In the chamber today, when the structural element fell, you moved toward the child. Yes. Not away. No. The child is yours. She is. Her name. Nora paused 1 beat. Just 1. Lily. Velith's expression shifted in the same small, unclassifiable way it had when Nora said she was fine standing. Something noting itself internally. How long have you been her guardian? Since she was born. 10 years. Her other parent? Not in the picture. Velith accepted this without reaction. She walked to the viewport and stood with her back partly toward Nora, looking at the stars, which were thick and cold, and going in every direction, without any particular concern for the beings watching them. In Varric structure, offspring are assigned to units. The parenting function is distributed. No single adult bears primary responsibility. I know, Nora said. I read the briefing. Does the briefing explain why? It explains the rationale. Distributed care reduces individual loss impact. If one caregiver is lost, the child's stability is maintained by the others. Velith turned her head slightly. You understand the reasoning. I understand it. I don't operate by it. Another silence. Longer. In the chamber, Velith said. When the structure fell, how much time did you have? Enough to move. Enough to calculate. Nora looked at her steadily. What do you mean? The trajectory of the falling element. The probable outcome. Your own location relative to both. Velith turned fully now. Her eyes were on Nora with a focus that felt less like being watched and more like being measured. Did you calculate before you moved? The question sat in the room. Nora answered it honestly, because she had decided early in this conversation that dishonesty would be both detectable and stupid. No. Velith went very still. Not the stillness of composure. The stillness of something that has just encountered a load it didn't expect, and is recalculating its own structure. It lasted only a few seconds. But Nora saw it. You did not calculate, Velith said. No. There was no assessment of odds. No. No consideration of value. Her value. Your value. The comparative outcome. No. Velith turned away again toward the viewport. When she spoke next, it was quieter. Not softer. A different thing. My analysts have reviewed the sensor recording from the chamber. They have calculated what you did, your position, the spar's velocity, the probable outcome if you had not moved, and the probable outcome if you had moved and failed to cover the child fully. She paused. The margin of safety for the child was reasonable. The margin of safety for you was not. I know, Nora said. And yet you moved without calculation. Yes. A long pause. The stars outside sat there, doing nothing useful. I have ruled 32 client species, Velith said. I have studied human behavioral models for 14 of your years in preparation for this contact period. The models described human parental bonding as strong, as a notable trait. The models did not. She stopped, started again. They described it. They did not convey what it looks like from the outside. Nora was quiet. It looks like a system error, Velith said. From the outside, it looks like a malfunction. An organism bypassing its own survival calculation to protect something that, from a pure resource perspective, does not justify the cost. She turned again. And yet you do not look like a malfunctioning organism. I'm not, Nora said. Then explain it. She's my kid. The 3 words landed in the very large, very quiet room, and sat there, not particularly interested in expanding themselves. Velith looked at her for a long moment. That is not an explanation. I know, but it's the answer. Something moved through Velith's expression. Frustration, Nora thought, but the clean kind. The kind that comes from a mind used to finding answers, being denied a complete one. If the child had died, Velith said, if your action had failed, what would you have done? Nora looked at her. I don't think about that. Contingency thinking is... I know what contingency thinking is. I don't do it in that direction. She said it plainly, without heat. There are things I plan for. That's not one of them. Velith was quiet again for a full 30 seconds. Nora counted. Then, without inflection, you have done this before. Not a question. Nora held the Queen's gaze. What makes you say that? Because you were not surprised by yourself, Velith said. When you stood up from the floor with the injury and the child in your arms, you looked like someone completing a familiar action, not someone discovering what they are capable of. A pause. You have been a body between that child and danger before. The sealed shoulder gave a small throb, not answering the question, just reminding her it had one. More than once, Nora said. That was all she gave. Velith accepted it. She turned back to the viewport for a moment and was quiet for so long that Nora wondered if the audience was over, and no one had said so. Then Velith spoke to the viewport glass, to the stars that weren't listening, in a voice that had dropped to something that was nearly private. In 32 negotiations, across 32 species, I have never received an answer I could not place somewhere. Every behavior, every response, every act of resistance or loyalty or desperation, I have had a category for it. She paused. You have given me 3 answers in this room that I have no category for. Nora said nothing. You will come back tomorrow, Velith said. Not a question, not an invitation. Something between a requirement and a decision she had just made, stated aloud partly for Nora's benefit and partly for her own. Nora did not say yes. She also did not say no. She gave a small nod. The kind you give when you are acknowledging that you have heard something, which is not the same thing as agreeing to it, and turned toward the door. She walked at the same pace she had entered with. The door opened. The corridor was there, long and cool and hum-lit. She rolled her good shoulder once. Then she went to find Lily. The medical bay on the Varick station was cleaner than any room Nora had ever been treated in, which was either reassuring or unsettling, and she couldn't decide which. The instruments were unfamiliar. The light was blue-white and even, the kind that doesn't cast shadows, which should have been calming, and mostly just made everything look like it was already being documented for evidence. The Varick medic, small, efficient, with 4 hands that moved like they had practiced this on humans before, which was either a good sign or worth asking about, had cleaned the shoulder wound and sealed it with something that felt cold and smelled faintly like a copper pipe. It wasn't stitched. Nora didn't ask about the material. She had learned a long time ago that asking about medical details in the middle of being patched up only introduced information she couldn't use yet. Deep bruising across the scapula, Cal translated from the medic's statement. He was standing in the corner with his arms crossed, and the face he made when he was relieved in a way that was still too close to terror to be comfortable. Soft tissue injury. Nothing structural. She says you'll have full movement back in. He paused. Listen to the second half. 5 days. Give or take the conversion factor. That's fine, Nora said. Nora, the ceiling hit you. I'm aware of what happened, Cal. Lily was sitting on a low bench along the wall, eating something from a packet that Owen had produced from somewhere in his bag, with the particular quiet efficiency of a person who prepares for everything. She was watching the medic finish with her mother's shoulder, with the focused, measuring look she'd had since she was 3. Not scared exactly, just taking inventory of the situation before she decided what to feel about it. Nora caught her eye. Lily gave her a small nod. I'm fine, you're fine. This was their whole language sometimes, packed into a look. The medic finished, said something to Cal, and left. Cal unfolded his arms and refolded them differently, which was what he did when he was about to say something he didn't want to say. There's a summons, he said. Nora looked at her shoulder, rolled it once, testing. The sealed skin pulled tightly but held. From who? Sovereign Velith, delivered formally, through the senior protocol officer, about 8 minutes ago. He held up the datapad. It's addressed specifically to you. Not the commission, not the delegation head. You, by name. What does it say? It says, and I want to be accurate here, that the Sovereign requests the presence of the human female who acted in the chamber during the structural incident. They mean you. He turned the pad so she could see the translation. The word they use for the request is, Owen, what did you say the weight of that word was? Owen looked up from his own pad. It's more of a, the word sits between invitation and requirement. In Varick diplomatic register, it means you can technically decline, but doing so would be a statement. A statement of what? Nora said. Disrespect, Owen said, or fear. The connotation covers both. Nora sat with that for a moment. The blue-white light hummed above them. Somewhere deeper in the station, a low vibration moved through the floor that she had decided was mechanical and not worth worrying about. When? She said. An hour, Cal said. Nora, we don't have a clear picture of what she wants. The summons isn't framed as diplomatic. It's not about the mission. It says explicitly it's about what you did, about the act itself. The Varick don't do things without a reason, and their reasons are not always the ones we can see. I know that. I could come with you. As liaison, there's a case to be made that no. Nora, she asked for me, Cal. Not the commission, me. She stood carefully, testing the shoulder, working out the new geography of the injury. If I walk in there with the diplomatic layer visible, it tells her something I don't want to tell her yet. What does it tell her? That I'm scared. Cal looked at her. Then he looked at Lily. Then he looked back at Nora, with the expression of a man running through counter-arguments and finding all of them insufficient. Fine. But Owen does a preliminary scan of the route, and I want a check-in signal every... Cal. She said it gently. I'll be fine. Owen offered to come. She told him no without looking up from pulling her jacket back on over the sealed shoulder. He opened his mouth, thought better of it, and closed it again. He had been on Nora's team for 14 months. He was learning. She crossed the bay to where Lily sat. I have to go see someone, she said. Lily looked at her. The Queen. Yes. Are you in trouble? Nora thought about the honest version of the answer and the useful version of the answer and decided they were close enough to the same. No, she just wants to talk. Lily looked at her with the particular expression that meant she knew the adult was simplifying and was choosing to allow it out of love rather than inability to detect it. Then she went back to her packet. Okay. I'll be back before dinner. I know. Nora walked the corridor toward the Queen's chamber alone. The station's design worked on the other delegates. She had seen it, the ceilings that went up too far, the walls that angled inward slightly, so rooms felt like they were leaning over you. The lights placed high, so you were always looking up at the source. Smart, expensive, deliberate. She had grown up in a house in Ohio, where the ceiling in the kitchen had a water stain shaped like the continental United States, and the baseboard heater in the back bedroom only worked if you hit it twice at the right angle. She had slept in field tents. She had treated injuries in corners of rooms that didn't have walls yet. Imposing spaces were just spaces. They got cold the same as everything else. Somebody had to fix the plumbing. She noted the exits as she walked. Corner placements, structural load points, not because she expected to need them, because this was what her body did when it didn't have better information. She cataloged, she filed, she moved forward anyway. The corridor widened as she approached the chamber. 2 Varric guards at the entrance, tall and still as things that don't need to prove anything. They moved aside. The doors were high, dark. They opened inward, slowly, the way things open when they want you to understand that what is inside was not waiting for you. You were admitted. Nora rolled her good shoulder once, loose, ready for nothing specific and everything general. She stepped through. The doors closed behind her. The chamber was larger than the welcome hall, and quieter than anywhere she had ever been. At the far end, near a viewport that looked out on open space, Sovereign Velith stood with her back partly turned. The bruised purple of her carapace caught the starlight and held it, 2 lower arms folded, 2 upper arms at rest. She did not turn immediately. Nora walked forward at a steady pace. The walk of someone who has been to enough difficult rooms to know that the walk itself is a sentence, and she intended to make sure it said the right thing. She stopped at a reasonable distance and waited. Velith turned. Her eyes moved across Nora with the same reading a document quality as before. Slower this time, more thorough. Then she spoke. The translator rendered it a half-beat later. "You are injured." "Yes," Nora said. "Because of the child." "Yes." Velith was quiet for a moment. Then, "Sit if you need to." "I'm fine standing," Nora said. Something shifted in Velith's expression, too subtle to name. She gestured toward the center of the room, and Nora walked to where she was directed, and the audience began. Galactic Council betrayed humans. We issued the order. Part 1. The Calm Before the Storm. Dale Harris had always loved the view from the bridge of the UES Vanguard. Out there, beyond the thick glass, the stars looked like salt thrown across a black cloth. They were peaceful, silent. They did not lie to you. He had spent most of his adult life in space, and he had learned one thing very clearly. The stars were honest. The people who lived among them were not always the same. He stood with his hands behind his back and watched the ship move through open space. The Vanguard was a clean, well-run diplomatic vessel, not a warship. It carried no heavy weapons. It carried something more important than weapons. It carried the word of Earth's government. And right now, that word was headed toward the largest gathering of alien civilizations in the known galaxy. Concordia Prime was the home of the Galactic Council. It was a space station so large it had its own weather systems inside. 31 species had seats there. They had been meeting, talking, arguing, and making rules together for over 200 years. Humanity had joined them 31 years ago, after first contact, after the shock wore off, after Earth's governments stopped arguing with each other long enough to agree on a single voice to send out to the stars. That voice, right now, was Dale Harris. He was Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, and he was 2 hours from docking. "We're being hailed, sir," said Lieutenant Lena Ford from the communications console behind him. Lena was 26 years old, and had the kind of focus that made older officers nervous. She had studied alien languages since she was 14. She could read the mood of a transmission before the translator finished working. Dale trusted her more than anyone else on the ship. "Put it through," he said. The voice that filled the bridge was smooth and layered. It sounded like music played slightly off-key on purpose. That was how Vel-3 voices always sounded to human ears. It was High Counselor Marin Vel, the most senior member of the Council's founding group. "Ambassador Harris, the Council is ready to receive you. We look forward to a good summit." Dale said the right words back. He smiled. He was polite and warm, as ambassadors are trained to be. He said he looked forward to productive conversations and continued cooperation between Earth and the Council's member species. He did not know, as the words left his mouth, that Marin Vel had already signed a document 6 weeks earlier that would change everything. He did not know that the warm words on both sides of that conversation were only warm on his side. He would find out soon enough. 12 light years away from where Dale stood, a man named Kevin Brandt was sitting at a desk surrounded by supply manifests and cold coffee. Kevin ran Ashford Station. It was not a glamorous job. Ashford was a mid-sized human colony, 40,000 people living on a deep space platform in the Outer Rim. They mined, they farmed in pressurized bays, they raised families, they fixed machines, and they mostly got on with their lives without thinking too hard about the Galactic Council or interstellar politics. Kevin liked it that way. He was a practical man who liked practical work. The proximity alarm changed his morning completely. It was loud and sharp, the kind of sound that pulls you out of your chair before your brain has finished waking up. Kevin was on his feet and moving toward the observation deck before he was fully aware of it. He got to the window and looked out at the dark. The dark was full of ships. They were not human ships. They were big, angular, and gray, with weapons ports that glowed faintly, even at rest. Kevin had seen pictures of Drogue war carriers in briefing files. He had never expected to see 17 of them parked outside his station. The Drogue were the Galactic Council's military arm. They were the species trusted to carry out enforcement actions across the Outer Rim. They were not known for being warm or patient. Kevin kept his voice steady when he picked up the comm. "This is Ashford Station, Director Kevin Brandt, to all Drogue vessels. Please state your purpose. You are currently in human sovereign space under the terms of the Lyran Accord." He waited 30 seconds. "Director Brandt." The Drogue commander's voice was low and rough. "By authority of Galactic Council Resolution 7 Sigma, the Ashford sector has been reclassified as a Drogue protectorate zone. All human residents are ordered to begin evacuation within 48 standard hours. Any resistance will be treated as an act of aggression against Council authority." Kevin stood very still. He looked at the ships outside. He looked at the 40,000 people who were his responsibility, and who were, at this moment, eating breakfast, or walking their kids to school, or doing all the small ordinary things that people do when they feel safe. "What is Resolution 7 Sigma?" he said quietly to his aide, a young woman named Clara Oakes, who was standing behind him with a datapad already in her hands. Clara's face had gone the color of old paper. "I'm pulling it now, sir. It was passed 6 weeks ago. The vote was unanimous, all 7 founding species." "What about the human seat?" "Ambassador Reyes passed away 3 months ago. The seat has not been filled since." Kevin turned that over in his mind. He turned it over carefully, the way you turn over a piece of machinery when you suspect something is wrong with it, but you cannot yet see where. "So they voted," he said slowly, "while our seat was empty." "Yes, sir. And the resolution gives them authority over this sector. Over 17 human Outer Rim sectors, sir. Ashford is just the first one they've moved on." Kevin was quiet for a long moment. He watched the Drog war carriers sitting in the dark outside his window, patient and enormous. And he thought about what 48 hours actually meant for 40,000 people. Then he picked up the long-range transmitter. He began with Earth's government communications channel. He then tried the diplomatic corps relay, then the military emergency line. He sent the same message on all three: short, clear, factual. No panic in the words, just the facts, laid out plainly. Drog war carriers. Resolution 7 Sigma. 48 hours, 17 sectors. He was not a man who scared easily. He had run this station through equipment failures, a fire in the agricultural bay, a 2-week power shortage, and a docking accident that put 3 workers in the medical ward. He had handled all of it without raising his voice. But as he set down the transmitter and looked back out at the ships, he felt something he had not felt in a long time. Not quite fear, something older and quieter than fear. The feeling of standing on ground you trusted and feeling it move. Clara was watching him from across the room. "What do we do now?" she asked. Kevin kept his eyes on the war carriers outside. "We wait," he said, "and we make sure Earth knows exactly what is sitting outside our front door." He paused, "and then we see what Earth does about it."
Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Stars. Today, we're diving into a fascinating conversation about loyalty, authority, and the complexities of relationships in a structured society. I'm Nora, your co-host.
And I'm Veleth. We have a gripping dialogue to unpack, featuring a powerful exchange that questions the very nature of loyalty and choice.
Absolutely, Veleth. So let's set the scene. Nora approaches Veleth with a firm stance. She immediately states she won't accept the position as it's been laid out.
Right. And it's not just a rejection. Nora emphasizes the importance of explaining her reasoning. What do you think drives her to take such a bold approach?
I think it's about authenticity. She wants to clarify that loyalty based on power dynamics is not true loyalty. It's a tax, a transactional relationship.
Exactly. Nora highlights that the structure Veleth has created might work for others, but it won't work for her. It's a bold statement against conformity.
And the way she articulates her point is so compelling. She brings up a moment of instinct when she protected her daughter, which transcended any hierarchical system.
That's a significant moment. It showcases how true loyalty can arise from personal connections and choices, rather than imposed authority.
And when Veleth asks what Nora offers instead, it's fascinating to see Nora position herself as a truth teller, not a shield keeper.
Right. She wants to be someone who provides honest feedback, even when it's uncomfortable. How rare is that in any court or organization?
Very rare. And then we see Veleth's expression shift slightly when discussing Nora's child. It's a subtle but powerful moment.
It really is. It shows Veleth's humanity peeking through her royal facade. That little glimpse of amusement is so telling.
And then we get to the crux of their discussion, loyalty that is chosen rather than required. Veleth asks if that can exist outside of parent-child relationships.
Nora's answer is simple yet profound. Yes, it just takes longer. What a poignant takeaway for anyone navigating complex relationships.
As they wrap up, there's a sense of unresolved tension, but also a new understanding. Nora leaves, promising to return, but on her own terms.
Exactly. It's a powerful conclusion that emphasizes the importance of agency in relationships. So, what can our listeners take away from today's discussion?
I think the key takeaway is the distinction between loyalty derived from power versus loyalty born from choice. It's all about connection and authenticity.
Well said. It's a reminder that true loyalty is a complex, nuanced concept that requires understanding and respect. Thanks for joining us today.
Be sure to tune in next time for more explorations beyond the stars. Until then, keep questioning and seeking the truth.